They say when you've been with someone long enough, you start to feel their rhythms. The way they breathe when they sleep, the sound of their footsteps down the hall, even the kind of silence they leave behind when they're gone. That's how I knew something was wrong the moment I walked in the front door that Wednesday afternoon. It wasn't anything loud or obvious. Nothing broken, no mess, just this subtle wrongness. A shift in the air, like I'd walked into a room where a conversation had just ended, or someone had just left. The quiet wasn't normal. It was staged. I paused in the entryway, letting the door shut behind me. The house smelled faintly like lemon oil and fabric softener, the usual, but layered over it was something unfamiliar. A sharp, clean scent, distinctly masculine. Not overpowering, but definitely not mine. I don't wear cologne anymore, haven't in years. Too many chemicals and too many headaches. Leslie says I smell fine without it, like cedar and laundry and old man soap. Whatever that means. I set my keys on the tray by the door, reached down to untie my boots, and that's when I saw it. The jacket. Hanging on the third hook from the left. My hook was a men's sport jacket I'd never seen before. Charcoal gray. Tailored. Expensive. The kind of jacket that doesn't come from any store in our sleepy South Carolina town. That's for damn sure. It looked brand new, no lint, no wrinkles. The stitching was precise, the cut athletic. I stepped closer, and there it was on the chest. A silver-stitched emblem. Tennis rackets crossed in a shield. Harbor Pines Athletic Club. Private. Exclusive. And absolutely not mine. I just stood there staring at it for a moment. Heart suddenly tight in my chest. I've never been the jealous type. Even when I was younger, I wasn't the kind of man to go snooping through bags or counting phone calls. But seeing that jacket hanging in my house, on my hook, made my skin crawl. I touched the fabric. Smooth. Italian wool. I looked inside the collar. A label. Custom fitted. Someone's name embroidered in cursive, but too faded to read clearly. I reached beneath the hem, nothing in the pockets. That's when I noticed the shoes. Just barely visible near the hallway. A pair of men's loafers. Brown leather, soft as butter. They were turned neatly toward the wall like someone had stepped out of them with care. Not the way I leave my boots. Crooked and tired. I didn't want to believe what I was already thinking, but I couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. Leslie was supposed to be at yoga. She always went on Wednesday afternoons, 2:30 sharp. She even laid out her mat and filled her bottle the night before, like clockwork. But now I found myself standing alone in a house that smelled like a stranger, staring at a jacket that didn't belong, and trying to stop my hands from shaking. I walked slowly down the hallway toward the bedroom. I wasn't being sneaky, just quiet, listening for something I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. The bedroom was immaculate. Bed made. Curtains drawn open just enough to let in the soft July light. But something was off here, too. On the chair near the dresser, the same chair Leslie always dumped her sweaters on, was a folded scarf. Not hers. Or at least not one I'd ever seen before. It was designer, I could tell that much. Silky. Patterned in deep reds and navy blues, with faint gold detailing at the edges. It looked like something you'd wear to a Parisian gala, not to a yoga studio. It wasn't draped like something someone had just tossed. It was laid out, like it was meant to be seen. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it, heart pounding in my chest, trying to keep my thoughts from running too far ahead. But they were already gone. I turned toward the bathroom and stepped inside. That's when I smelled it again. Stronger this time. Cologne. Something crisp and musky. Definitely not the Dr. * store kind. I sniffed the air like a bloodhound, following the trail. It lingered near the sink. The hand towel was damp, recently used. Leslie's lipstick wasn't on the rim of the cup, and the toothbrush holder had one extra brush in it. Blue. New. Out of place. I backed out slowly. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew something wasn't right. Maybe I'd finally lost it, I told myself. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Retirement had given me too much time to think, and maybe I was inventing problems where none existed. But no matter how I tried to talk myself down, I couldn't shake the feeling crawling up my spine. I turned, walked back down the hall, and opened the garage door. We've got a small setup out there. Just enough space for 2 cars and a little workbench where I still tinker with old tools when I'm restless. Above the bench is the camera screen. I installed it after our neighbor's lawnmower got swiped last fall. It feeds directly from the back and side entrances. I scrolled through the footage. Tuesday, nothing. Monday, just squirrels. I fast-forwarded to that afternoon. There it was. Time-stamped 2:17 p.m. A man. Early 40s, maybe. Athletic build. Gray t-shirt, dark sunglasses, short cropped hair. Walked up the side of the house like he'd done it before. He didn't look around. Didn't hesitate. Just opened the back gate and slipped inside. 20 seconds later, the camera picked up movement again. He unlocked the door and stepped in through the mudroom. The side Leslie never locks. The one I've told her a dozen times to fix. I watched the seconds tick by. No sound. Just him entering our house like he belonged there. I fast-forwarded again. 47 minutes later, there he was, stepping back out. Sunglasses on again. Jacket missing. He glanced around once, casually, then walked back toward the side gate and disappeared out of frame. At 4:12, Leslie pulled into the driveway, her hair up in a bun. Gym bag in the passenger seat. Nothing out of the ordinary, except now I knew. I went back inside and stood in the entryway again, holding the jacket. I didn't even hear the front door open. "Oh, hey," Leslie said cheerfully, stepping in and pulling off her sandals. "You're home early." I didn't say anything. I just held up the jacket. Her smile faltered, just for a moment. Then she laughed. "Too high, too light." "Oh, that's our trainers. You remember I told you I was having trouble with the car? He helped me out earlier. Came by to check the engine." I looked at her. Not angry, not even shocked. Just tired. She kept smiling. "He left it behind, I think. I told him to come in while I was calling the mechanic. He must have forgotten it." She stepped forward and took it gently from my hands, then hung it back up like nothing had happened. I stared at her for a few more seconds, trying to decide what to believe. But something in me, something quiet and steady, had already made up its mind. After the jacket incident, I started to see everything differently. It's funny how your brain works once the seed of doubt takes root. It doesn't just tug at the present moment. It pulls threads from the past, unwinding memories you thought were solid until you realized they were built on sand. I couldn't stop thinking about the jacket, the shoes, the cologne, and Leslie's too quick smile when she gave that explanation. But what scared me more than anything was how easy it was to almost believe her. That night, I barely slept. Leslie dozed off beside me like nothing had happened. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow and steady above our bed. At some point, I reached for my old notebook from the nightstand drawer and scribbled down. 2:17 p.m. Man enters house. 3:04 leaves. 4:12 Leslie returns. Claims, car issue trainer. Just the facts. Like I used to do when I worked in structural analysis. Diagnose the cracks before the whole foundation gave out. And once I started writing things down, I couldn't stop. I began remembering things I hadn't thought about in years. Little moments I'd brushed aside or chalked up to stress, bad timing, or aging. Like the first women's retreat Leslie ever went on. It was in Asheville, about a 5-hour drive from Spring Point. She told me it was a 4-day yoga and wellness thing, a gift from one of her friends. She came back flushed and radiant, raving about the massages and the group clarity sessions. Whatever that meant, I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But now I remembered the brand new bracelet she wore home. Silver, etched with a pattern I couldn't quite place. When I asked about it, she said it was from the retreat gift shop. Later, I found the tag in the trash. Van Leeuwen Jewelers, Seaside Branch. Not Asheville. I wrote it down. Another time, it was the messaging app on her phone. Not the usual text app, but a second one she claimed was for group therapy. I didn't question it. We all need someone to talk to. But I remember seeing a notification pop up once when she left her phone on the coffee table. A message from someone named Ray. Just a single word. Tonight? She saw me looking and swiped it away before I could ask. Back then, I didn't want to be that guy, the suspicious husband, the one who checked his wife's phone or second-guessed her every move. That wasn't me. I'd built bridges and trust and a whole damn life with Leslie. We'd weathered job changes, money stress, her surgery, my retirement. I thought we were steady. But now, with each memory, I realized how many things I'd shrugged off in the name of love. There were the cash withdrawals. Always around weekends, she claimed to be out meditating with her women's circle. It didn't seem like much at the time, $60 here, $100 there. But it added up. And the destinations were always vague. She once said she went to a lodge near the foothills, but couldn't name the town. Another time it was somewhere peaceful with trees. Always vague. Always just out of reach. I pulled up the bank's online portal and enabled transaction alerts. Every time a card was swiped or cash was pulled, I'd get pinged. And I went back further. I opened our joint credit card history and combed through the last 2 years line by line. It took me all of Thursday and part of Friday, but I made a list. Boutiques she never told me about, restaurants she never mentioned, and once a lingerie store in Charleston. She told me she went there with her sister. I remember thinking it was strange, since her sister lives in Minnesota and hates the heat. She had always been good at explanations. Casual. Effortless. Her stories stitched together just well enough to pass. And I wanted to believe her, wanted to so badly that I never saw the holes. But now I was looking at everything with fresh eyes. And then there was the club card. About 6 months earlier, I had offered to drive her car to the shop for an oil change, but she insisted on doing it herself. Her purse was sitting on the passenger seat, and when I moved it to get inside, a small black card slipped out from the side pocket. I picked it up. Laura Brooks, Harbor Pines Athletic Club. I frowned. Harbor Pines was the same name on the jacket in our foyer. At the time, I asked her about it. She said it was an old alias she used to sign up for promotional fitness classes. They send you discounts, she'd laughed. You know how places are about memberships. I never actually go. She took the card from my hand and slipped it back into her purse, kissing me on the cheek. You worry too much, Dave. Back then, I believed her. Now, I realized what she was really doing. I added the alias to my notes. I bought a small black planner, the kind I could hide inside my desk drawer. On the front page, I wrote, "Observations do not ignore." Each day, I jot something down. Not dramatic, not wild, just data, like I used to do at work. July 10th, yoga bag in car, but shoes still clean. July 14th, new dress. Tag says Neiman Marcus. Not mentioned. July 17th. Said she was going to Greenville. Uber location pinged near Hilton Head. July 19th, call from tennis club. Leslie answered in hallway. Said it was a wrong number. I wasn't sure what I was building. Not yet. But it felt like scaffolding for the truth. Around this time, I started talking to someone. A lawyer named Claire Thompson. I didn't go in G*NS blazing. I just asked for a consultation. Told her I had suspicions but needed guidance. Claire listened without interrupting, nodded at the right moments, and when I showed her the notebook, she didn't flinch. I've seen Les go further, she said. If what you're suspecting is true, we need to start protecting your interests now. She gave me instructions. Don't confront. Don't accuse. Gather. Document. Stay quiet. That night, I looked at Leslie differently. She was sitting at the table, scrolling through her phone, drinking white wine from a glass with a tiny chip on the rim. She looked relaxed, ordinary, familiar, and I realized something. She had no idea I knew. That was the most chilling part. I wasn't some heartbroken fool grasping at shadows. I was methodical, focused, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the truth. The next weekend, she said she was heading to a silent meditation retreat. No phones, no emails, full disconnect, she told me, pulling out her overnight bag and tossing in books with titles like Soul Recovery and The Stillness Path. I nodded, kissed her goodbye at the door, watched her drive off in the car I'd bought for our anniversary 2 years ago. At 7:24 p.m., my phone buzzed. New transaction, Sandbar Inn, Myrtle Beach. $647.89. It wasn't a yoga lodge, and Leslie wasn't alone. I took a slow breath, pulled out the notebook, and started a new page. The moment the hotel transaction hit my phone, I knew I was done pretending. It came through at 7:24 p.m. on a Friday, just over 3 hours after Leslie left for her so-called silent retreat. The Sandbar Inn wasn't a yoga retreat center or a cabin in the woods. It was a beachfront hotel in Myrtle Beach, a 4-star place with rooftop jacuzzis and spa packages for couples. The charge was for 2 nights in a premium suite. I stared at the alert on my phone like it might shift into something less damning if I waited long enough. But it didn't. There it was, her name, our shared card, a place she'd never mentioned. Another lie, bold and careless. I didn't text her, didn't call. She'd already warned me, I won't be reachable. They take our phones when we arrive. Full digital detox. She had smiled when she said it, like it was something pure, necessary. I had nodded, told her to be safe, kissed her cheek. Now I knew what that smile had really meant. I waited until the next morning. I didn't sleep much, just paced the house in slow circles, kitchen to living room to garage and back, like I was stuck in a loop I couldn't step out of. Every time I passed our hallway mirror, I barely recognized the man in the reflection. I'd always thought of myself as grounded, solid, reliable, problem solver, someone who could be counted on to keep calm under pressure. But now, I looked hollowed out, tense, older. By 7:30 a.m., I was already halfway to Myrtle Beach. I didn't tell anyone, just packed a small bag, grabbed a camera, and drove. The weather was humid, overcast. The kind of gray sky that looked like it might cry for you, so you didn't have to. I didn't have a plan, just a hunch. I figured if she'd used our card for the booking, the name would match and I'd be able to find her. I parked a block away and waited, seated on a public bench near the entrance of the hotel, sipping bitter coffee from a paper cup and pretending to read the local newspaper. At 9:14 a.m., they appeared. Leslie, and a man I had never seen before. She wore a white dress, flowy and soft, the kind she never wore around the house. Her hair was damp, freshly washed, tucked behind her ears the way she used to do when she got out of the ocean. Her face glowed with something I hadn't seen in a long time, relief. Not guilt, not shame, just this lightness, like she was exactly where she wanted to be. The man beside her was tall, clean-cut, in a tailored blazer and sunglasses. Confident, too confident. They walked side by side, smiling like teenagers ditching school. At one point, he leaned in to whisper something, and she touched his chest as she laughed. I took photos. I didn't want to. Felt dirty like surveillance. But I couldn't let myself doubt it later. I needed the truth to be solid, captured, indisputable. They walked to her car, our car, technically, and drove off. I didn't follow. I already had what I needed. Back at home, I sat at my desk for hours, combing through every tool Claire had given me. I confirmed the hotel reservation had been made under a different email than Leslie normally used. One of those burner-style Gmail addresses with just enough plausible deniability. #eventplanner12@gmail.com. I requested a receipt copy as her assistant. It came back within minutes. Laura Brooks, 2 guests, premium Ocean View suite. Laura Brooks again. The alias on the gym card. The same one I found on her retreat forms when she forgot to log out of her email one night. That name kept showing up, shadowing her like a second life she'd stitched together with care. But who was the man? I reverse-searched the license plate from a blurry photo I'd taken of his car, parked at the hotel. It took some work and a contact through a friend in property records, but eventually I had a name, Vincent Allard. At first, the name didn't register. But then it hit me. I'd read it in the paper a few years ago. He was a district administrator, flagged for a city zoning issue that almost cost the county millions. He'd been publicly reprimanded, then quietly moved into a different role. His name disappeared from the headlines, but apparently not from the messes he liked to make. A deeper search revealed something far worse. Vincent Allard was married, still married, to a woman named Catherine Lovell. The same Catherine Lovell who sat on the bench as a family court judge in our district. I stared at the screen in stunned silence. I'd been trying to find out who my wife had become, and instead, I'd uncovered a mess that reached much farther than our quiet little life. I brought everything to Claire the next day. Every receipt, every GPS log, every photo. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. Just opened a file folder, began sorting, and said, "We'll need to verify the lease next." "Lease?" I asked. She nodded. "If they're cohabitating under an alias, and we can prove it's her with an alternate identity, that changes everything. Adultery's one thing. Living a double life under false documentation? That's something else entirely." We filed a request with the county clerk's office in Brooklyn, where the email domain connected to a lease document I found buried in her junk email. It took 3 days, but we got a hit. A furnished apartment leased by Vincent Allard and Laura Brooks. Signed, stamped, active. Claire looked up at me after reading the scanned file. "This isn't just cheating," she said. "It's calculated fraud." I didn't respond. I just stared at the paper. Somehow, seeing her signature, Leslie's handwriting, right there beside his, broke me more than the photographs, more than the lies. She hadn't just strayed. She'd built something with this man. Signed documents, paid rent, lied on forms, created a second reality. And all the while she came home to me, ate at our table, slept in our bed, smiled across from me at church like everything was still what it had always been. Claire reached across the desk and tapped her fingers on the table. "We'll submit it to the court under sealed evidence. The judge will see it. It may affect property division, support claims, custody if there were children. It will also raise ethical concerns, especially with who her partner is." I looked at her. "Do we tell the judge?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "We don't have to accuse. We present facts. The judge will connect the dots." Later that evening, Leslie came home like any other day. Her sandals kicked off at the door, her gym bag slung over one shoulder. She kissed my cheek like nothing had changed. She didn't know I had photos of her laughing with another man outside a seaside hotel. She didn't know I had her signature on a lease in another state under a false name. She didn't know I had spoken with a lawyer. She didn't know the truth had stopped hiding. And I didn't plan on telling her. Not yet. There's a point in every betrayal where the pain stops being sharp. It doesn't mean you stop hurting. It just means the shock wears off and what's left is cold, methodical. You start thinking in steps, not questions. You stop asking, "Why would she do this to me?" and start asking, "What's the cleanest way out?" That was where I had landed, finally. No more pacing, no more sleepless nights running scenarios in my head. I was done reacting. Now it was my turn to move. Claire and I met the morning after the lease confirmation came in. I handed her a thumb drive with everything. Time-stamped hotel footage, credit card records, travel data, location logs from her phone, quietly synced from an old iPad she forgot to reset, and a detailed spreadsheet mapping every overlap between Leslie and Vincent's whereabouts. She opened the folder, browsed through a few files, then sat back and gave a slow nod. "This is airtight," she said. That's when we shifted from research to planning. She called it leverage. Not for revenge, not to blow things up publicly. This wasn't about humiliation or petty payback. It was about building a structure solid enough that no judge could ignore it, and no lawyer could twist it. Precision was what mattered now. Accuracy, paper trails, and timestamps. I'd spent 35 years in engineering. You don't accuse a beam of being weak, you measure it. You test it. You load it until it fails, and then you show the results. That's what this had become. A structural report on the collapse of a marriage. We divided the documentation into 3 categories. Financial misrepresentation, double spending under 2 identities, misuse of our joint assets for personal travel, and her use of the alias Laura Brooks to rent property. Adulterous conduct, physical proof of infidelity, confirmed cohabitation, and false claims regarding solo retreats. Ethical violations, her romantic partner's marriage to Judge Catherine Lovell and the inherent conflict of interest it posed, particularly with our family court case pending. The last part was delicate. If we moved too quickly, it would look vindictive. But if we waited too long, we might lose the advantage of surprise. Claire said we needed to time the filing carefully. Wait until Leslie filed her claims first. Let her overreach. Most people assume the spouse who plays the victim gets the sympathy, she told me. But only if their hands look clean. You let her show the court who she wants to be. Then we show them who she really is. So I stayed quiet. It wasn't easy. Every dinner, every smile she offered felt rehearsed. She had no idea I'd seen through the curtain. No idea I was watching the performance from backstage with a full script in my hand. She tried to play the doting wife. Asked if I wanted to go away for a weekend in September. Just the two of us. We could use a reset, she said, touching my arm. Maybe upstate? A cabin or something quiet. I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded. Sure, let's talk about it next week. That was the same day I drove to the P.O. box Claire had set up for me in town. All future mail, legal notices, court documents, private correspondence would be routed there. Leslie wouldn't see anything I didn't want her to. Claire called it a firewall. I called it peace of mind. We filed the initial paperwork 2 weeks later. Intent to dissolve marriage on the grounds of irreconcilable differences with substantiated evidence of infidelity and asset concealment. Claire filed it under seal. Leslie would be served in a controlled setting. No messy surprises, no emotional outbursts. Just documentation. She'd have 30 days to respond. And still, I said nothing. Instead, I played my part. I made her coffee in the morning. I asked about her yoga classes. I even helped her fix the door hinge on the linen closet. She kissed me goodnight with the same lips that told Vincent, "I'll be back before he notices." Every time she did, I wrote it down. There was a strange calm in having the truth and not using it right away. Power, maybe, or closure in slow motion. But the part that still gnawed at me, quietly, persistently, was Judge Lovell. I wasn't seeking justice for her. I didn't know her, and frankly, I didn't care about her marriage. But something about the whole thing sat wrong. A judge presiding over a courtroom where her husband's affair was happening behind her back. With a plaintiff? That was more than irony. That was contamination. Claire and I discussed it in her office late one evening. If we present the connection carelessly, she warned, it could derail the case or worse, invalidate the evidence. But if we hide it, it becomes a liability, I said. It looks like we're manipulating the court. She nodded slowly. So we go neutral. We don't accuse the judge. We don't accuse Vincent. We present the lease, the alias, the hotel logs, just the facts. Let the judge recuse herself if she needs to. No theatrics. That's exactly what we planned. The evidentiary hearing was scheduled for mid-September. Leslie was served the following Monday. She was sitting on our porch, sipping lemonade and scrolling on her tablet when the courier arrived. I was in the garage when I heard the knock, then the murmur of voices, and the slow creak of the screen door as it shut. I didn't walk out to see her reaction. She came into the kitchen 20 minutes later, white-faced and quiet. "You filed," she said, voice flat. I looked up from the newspaper. "Yes." She nodded slowly, lips pressed tight. Her hands trembled as she poured herself a glass of water. "I thought we were okay," she added. I didn't respond, because that was the last lie I was willing to entertain, that she thought we were okay. She didn't ask if I knew, didn't bring up Vincent, didn't even deny it. I think in that moment she understood. She hadn't just lost the upper hand. She'd lost the entire map. That night, she slept in the guest room. The next morning, Claire filed the motion to admit sealed evidence. Inside the folder were the receipts, the lease, the photos of Leslie and Vincent entering and exiting the Sandbar Inn. There were also records tying Leslie's alias to Vincent's travel card mileage program, and an email where Laura Brooks RSVP'd to a real estate gala as Vincent's partner. And at the back of the folder, placed carefully, respectfully, was a scanned copy of the Brooklyn lease. With Vincent's signature, and Leslie's. A judge would see it soon, and then the collapse would begin. Not with an explosion, but with a quiet unraveling of every story she'd ever told. The day of the hearing arrived with the kind of stillness that only shows up when something's about to break. I woke at 4:30 a.m. Not because of nerves, but because my body had trained itself to prepare. I stood in the bathroom for 10 full minutes just staring into the mirror. I didn't feel anger anymore, not even grief. What I felt was something colder, cleaner, like resolve stripped of emotion. Claire met me on the courthouse steps an hour before the hearing. She wore a charcoal suit, hair pinned neatly, face unreadable. She handed me a manila folder, my own personal copy of the evidence packet. I didn't need to open it. I'd already memorized every page. "She'll posture," Claire said quietly as we walked inside. "Expect her to present herself as overwhelmed, emotionally displaced, maybe even a little lost." "Isn't that the truth?" I muttered. Claire allowed herself a small smile. "Not quite. You don't get to play lost when you're renting apartments under fake names." The courtroom was more modern than I remembered. Clean lines, brushed steel accents, pale wood benches. Quietly clinical. There were maybe a dozen people seated. Some attorneys, a few observers, one bored-looking clerk. Leslie entered through the side, wearing a dove-gray pantsuit and low heels. Her hair was curled softly around her face. She looked smaller somehow, delicate, but I'd learned by now how much power could hide behind practiced softness. Her attorney, a woman named Elise Monroe, walked in right behind her. Elise had a reputation. Smart, calm, sharp as broken glass. She'd handled plenty of high-tension family court cases and rarely lost. When Leslie saw me, her expression flickered. Maybe pain, maybe recognition, but it disappeared too quickly to name. She sat 2 tables away from me, pulled out a notepad, and never looked up again. At exactly 9 a.m., Judge Catherine Lovell entered the courtroom. I recognized her from newspaper photos. Tight jawline, stern gaze, the kind of no-nonsense posture that made you sit up straighter just being in the same room. It hit me then, in a strange, surreal way. She doesn't know. Not yet. She didn't know that the woman petitioning her court had been living a parallel life with her husband. She would, though, and soon. The hearing began with formalities. Monroe opened with a carefully worded statement. "Your Honor, the petitioner, Mrs. Leslie Reed, has endured years of emotional neglect following her husband's retirement. She seeks equitable relief in the form of spousal support and exclusive use of the primary residence, citing the emotional distress resulting from the deterioration of their relationship." It was clinical, measured, and full of omissions. Claire didn't object. Not yet. Then Leslie spoke. She stood slowly, eyes downcast, voice trembling. "Just enough. I didn't plan to be here," she said. "This wasn't how I imagined the last part of our lives. But things changed. David became distant, cold. He'd go entire days without speaking to me unless I asked a direct question. I tried to be patient. I joined yoga. I volunteered. I even suggested therapy. But he always brushed me off." She paused, pressing a tissue to her cheek. A performance, I thought, but an expert one. "I just want peace," she continued. "I want to move forward with dignity. I'm not trying to take advantage of anyone. I gave up everything for this marriage, and I don't have anything left." I watched her without blinking. Claire stood next, slow and deliberate. "Your Honor, we respectfully reserve response until the sealed evidentiary session. We have materials that may recontextualize the petitioner's claims." Lovell nodded. "Very well. We'll break at noon. Sealed session at 1. Mr. Reed, you're not required to be present unless you choose." "I'll stay," I said. My voice was calm, clear. At lunch, Claire and I sat in a small consultation room 2 floors down. She didn't say much. Neither did I. We didn't need to. The weight of what was coming hung in the silence between us. At 1 p.m. sharp, we returned to the now-closed courtroom. No observers. Just Judge Lovell, the court recorder, both attorneys, and me. Leslie wasn't there for this part. Claire said it was cleaner that way, easier to control. Lovell adjusted her glasses as she looked at us. "You may proceed, Ms. Thompson." Claire stood, walked to the judge's bench, and handed over a single, thick folder. She didn't summarize it. She didn't make a speech. She just said, These materials concern the petitioner's ongoing relationship with Mr. Vincent Allard. Included are documents confirming cohabitation, identity falsification, and financial concealment. Your Honor, you may recognize the name. Lovell opened the folder. She started with the lease, Brooklyn, New York. Vincent Allard. Laura Brooks. Then the travel records, hotel receipts, email exchanges, photos, side-by-side ID signatures. Her face was unreadable at first. Then it changed. Not with shock, not with rage. It froze. Her eyes stopped moving on the page. Her jaw set tight. Her knuckles went white against the edge of the document. And then she turned the final page. Claire had saved that one for last. A time-stamped photo of Vincent and Leslie, hand in hand, stepping out of the Sandbar Inn. Lovell closed the folder without saying a word. She sat back, took a breath so sharp it sounded like glass being drawn across concrete. And then she said, "Court will stand in recess. Effective immediately, I recuse myself from further proceedings in this matter." Claire didn't respond. Neither did I. Judge Lovell turned to the clerk and said, "Refer this to Administrative Judge Brenner. Mark this session sealed under ethics protocol." She stood and left the bench. Just like that. Outside, Claire turned to me as we stepped into the sun. "She didn't cry," she said quietly. "She already knew," I replied. Claire nodded. "She just didn't have proof. Now she does." Later that evening, I watched the news alone. No mention yet, but it would come. A judge stepping down mid-case? People would talk. And when they looked deeper, when they connected the names, the faces, the signatures, they'd see the whole rotten structure. Not a courtroom, not a marriage, just an illusion. And like all illusions, it had finally begged *N to collapse.